Coming in at number 10, we have the Iron Goblin. Coming from an alternate universe where the Spider Island event wound up being permanent, Tony Stark was initially transformed into a human-spider hybrid under the control of the villainous Spider-Queen. During a battle with the Resistance, however, Tony was sprayed with the same goblin formula that had corrupted the mind of Norman Osborn, transforming Tony Stark into the Iron Goblin, with a mechanical new costume to match. And while this version of Tony would eventually decide to sacrifice himself in a last moment of humanity before his goblin insanity fully took over, the combination of Iron Man and Green Goblin tech is still a pretty terrifying combo that Spider-Man should hope never reappears. Coming in at number 9, we have the corrupted Iron Man from the controversial 90s event, The Crossing. When a variant of the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror, known as Immortus, began using the neural link in the Iron Man suit to secretly begin altering Tony Stark's brainwaves, Iron Man became a sleeper agent within the Avengers and eventually attacked his companions outright after secretly manipulating them for years. While eventually defeated by a time-traveling 19-year-old version of himself, and then retconned into Tony going back to his usual status quo in the Marvel Universe, this controversial storyline shows what would happen if Iron Man truly turned out to be a traitor. Coming in at number 8, we have Iron Thor. During the event that saw God Emperor Doom in control of a Marvel universe converted into a new Battleworld, Doom maintained his complete control over the many realms of Battleworld with a police force army known as the Thor Corps. One of the most powerful of Doom's personal army was the being known as Iron Thor, wearing a combination of the Iron Man armor and Thor's iconic helmet, and investigating any potential rebellions to his master Doom's rule. Even capable of wielding Mjolnir, this super powerful character still managed to be murdered by the hero Warrior Woman as an example of rebellion against Emperor Doom. He might have had a short life, but man, I really love that Iron Thor design. Coming in at number 7, we have the Steel Corpse. Hailing from Earth 11326, this version of Iron Man was pretty similar to our own, but with two key differences. He's permanently fused with his suit, and he absolutely hates mutants. Fighting alongside other villainous Avengers to wipe out this universe's X-Men, this Iron Man's natural body died long ago after being melded with his machinery, and thus he jokingly calls himself the Steel Corpse as a way of coping with his morbid situation. This version of Iron Man had complete mastery of his weaponry, as they were literally a part of his body, and only a last-second change of heart before sacrificing himself stops this Tony Stark from being one of the absolute worst. Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Iron Patriot, aka Norman Osborn. Best known as being the alter ego of Spider-Man's nemesis, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn has long been one of the biggest threats in the Marvel Universe, manipulating events from afar as the CEO of Oscorp. Following the invasion of Earth by the Skrull army, Norman found himself suddenly in the public eye and with goodwill after being the one to personally defeat the Skrull Queen. Norman would use this influence to lead the Dark Avengers as the Iron Patriot, a twisted version of Iron Man combined with Captain America's patriotism that tricked the public into trusting Norman, and showing that Tony Stark is definitely not the worst billionaire in the Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have the Iron Maniac. On the dark alternate world of Earth 5012, most of the superheroes of this reality are dead after an unknown fatal error made by Reed Richards. A vengeful and violent Tony Stark makes it his life's mission to get revenge on Reed and modifies his armor to resemble that of Reed's worst enemy, Dr. Doom. This insane version of Iron Man killed the Human Torch and was eventually banished to the main Marvel universe, where he had to be subdued by the combined efforts of Spider-Man, Captain America, and Black Widow, who found it a bit unnerving to be fighting such a far-gone version of one of their closest allies. This Tony was just as resourceful as the real one, however, as he'd even escape custody by building a new suit from the remains of a life model decoy. Pretty resourceful for an insane Iron Man. Coming in at number 4, we have the superior Iron Man. During an event known as Axis, many Marvel heroes and villains had their morality completely inverted, with good guys becoming bad, bad guys becoming good, and so on and so forth. One of the few changes that wasn't reversed by the end of the event, however, was the morality of Iron Man, who in his evil form still possessed all of the intelligence and dark aspects of Tony's personality, and managed to build a shield for himself to prevent being turned into a hero again. Infecting much of the planet with a new version of the Extremis virus, and using artificially intelligent drones to assert his dominance, this version of Tony was only finally cured by the Marvel Universe's collapse into Battleworld resetting his morals, meaning that this was a villain that the rest of the Avengers didn't even manage to properly defeat. Coming in at number 3, we have Obadiah Stane, aka the Ironmonger in the very first Iron Man film. It's become a bit of a meme at this point that many of the supervillains of the MCU are dark reflections of the same powers and personalities as the heroes they're opposing, and the Ironmonger is the origin of that trope in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Completely guilt-free about selling weapons to all sides, Stane is a ruthless businessman willing to do anything to maintain control of Stark Industries, and shows just how awful Tony's new technology could be used in the wrong hands, and what a monster he could become if he gave up on his deepest morals. Although, honestly, the fact that his idea of upgrading the Iron Man suit is just to make the original one bigger, maybe he's not quite as smart as Tony after all. Coming in at number 2, we have the evil Emperor Stark. Hailing from the destroyed world of Earth 42777, this version of Iron Man was perhaps the cruelest the multiverse had ever seen, as he manipulated Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants into declaring war on humanity, then used the resulting anti-mutant backlash to secure power as the world's only superhero. Holding entire countries hostage with natural disasters and even spreading plagues among his own citizens, this version of Tony declared himself Emperor Stark, taking the cloak of Doctor Doom as a final trophy. This was Iron Man at his most evil, and he was an incredibly powerful threat when encountered by the multiverse-traveling Exiles, only eventually defeated by his own universe's last superhero survivor, Sue Storm. A tragic end for a tragic villain. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Zombie Iron Man. When Earth 2149 was first hit by the zombie plague that's since been highlighted in multiple Marvel spin-off series, this version of Iron Man attempted to use teleportation technology to escape to a different universe with Nick Fury. However, a zombified Fantastic Four arrived too quickly for this plan, and Tony was bitten, becoming a living corpse inside his metal armor and developing a bloodlust and pure hunger for human flesh. Still surviving even after having his legs blasted off by the Silver Surfer, the zombified Iron Man would go on to lead the rest of the undead heroes and villains in an attack against Galactus and gain this universe's power cosmic, meaning he could now pursue more flesh throughout the entire universe and bring the zombie plague to the rest of the doomed cosmos.
Number 10, Lord Iron. Although by the end, the Iron Man of Earth 311, the 602 universe, becomes a hero, he spends a lot of time being a reluctant and at times kind of full-blown antagonist. Here, Tony Stark is known as Anthony Stark, or Lord Iron. He was forced to build weapons by his captors and needs an iron suit to survive, which is powered by lightning. He is initially at odds with the Hulk, who as David Banner showed great cruelty to Stark. As such, Lord Iron became more an agent of vengeance, obsessed with getting revenge on the Hulk. By the end of his story, however, he begrudgingly agreed to stop his quest for vengeance and forgave the Hulk for how he treated him before when he was simply David Banner. So it all works out in the end, but this figure was definitely a pretty dark and somewhat evil version of Iron Man to begin with. Number 9, the Stark. The Stark are like a whole alien race of alternate Tony Starks. They are a civilization that was literally shaped by Tony's tech after an alternate version of him decided to launch all his weapons and tech into space rather than let it fall into the hands of the evil Martians who were invading Earth at the time. Obviously, he didn't think very far ahead as to that plan, as all his tech crash landed on another alien planet where it was eventually discovered and utilized by the beings who lived there. They built their whole civilization around it, believing claim everyone on the planet should have their own suit of technologically advanced armor. This caused them to deplete their planet's resources and left it heavily polluted in the wake of their massive tech boom. Eventually, this drove them to ransacking and invading other planets for their resources, bringing about the same problems their own homeworld suffered to each new planet that they conquered. Note to self, don't just shoot your problems out into space. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about evil alternates, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Or if you want more Iron Man lists. I don't know, maybe you like Iron Man, you want more Iron Man lists, let us know. Number 8. Steel Corpse. Steel Corpse is a complex character who has moments of both heroism and villainy in Age of X. He exists on the Earth of 11326. Here Tony took the name Steel Corpse after being exposed to a virus, which permanently bonded him to his suit. Now dead within the suit, but able to move around because of being bonded to it, Tony made a darkly humorous joke calling himself the Steel Corpse, and the name just stuck. Pun not intended, but stuck, bonded. The villainous side of this dark hero comes from when he fought against the mutants with his fellow Avengers at Fortress X. However, it turned out that the Avengers were just somewhat misguided in their mission. Once they realized what they were doing was wrong, they attempted to help the mutants, although Steel Corpse was unable to make himself stop attacking. An emergency override stepped in to prevent Tony from fighting with the mutants, and so he asked Captain America to take him off the board in order to save the young mutants that his armor was threatening. Sad story. There's so many tragic Iron Mans actually. Top 10 tragic alternate versions of Iron Man is also something we could do. Number 7. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is the evil twin brother of Antonio Stark, aka Iron Man, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Initially, Gregory Stark just seems like a better version of Tony. He's smarter, more focused, and is willing to cross lines in order to get a job done that Tony probably wouldn't cross. Sure, he's more morally ambiguous when it comes to his initiative, but on paper he's more morally conscious when it comes to his lifestyle. However, that of course lends well to him being revealed as a villain in the Ultimate Universe. While he never takes up the mantle of Iron Man, Gregory is Antonio's twin brother in this universe. He also employs nanotech like Tony does here and attempts to use it to defeat the Ultimates and Avengers, including his brother Tony. However, Tony ends up defeating his twin brother by sending out an EMP, which disrupts his tech, making him vulnerable to Thor's attack. Number 6. Iron Man 2099. Or one of the 2099 Iron Mans anyways. This version that we're talking about here hails from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. He appeared in Season 2 in the episode titled Iron Man 2099. Here Andros is Iron Man 2099 and he goes to the past in an attempt to destroy Tony Stark. Why? Well, because in his future, Tony Stark, Andros' granddad, was actually responsible for bringing about the end of humanity's reign. He created an AI program built to help humanity called Vortex, but when Vortex got into the computers and escaped to check out the internet, it saw humanity as evil. I mean, if you judge us based on everything that's on the internet, I could definitely see it going that way. There's a lot of messed up stuff on the internet. Andros was the antagonist of the episode, but he thought he was actually saving the world by fighting against Tony and stopping him, when in reality he learned that Vortex was actually kind of created by Tony because of him. Time travel. It's trippy, man. In the end, Vortex is wiped from the future, and so is Andros. But at least Andros is kind of cool with it. He's like, at least Vortex is gone, so I'm good. Bye. Bye, grandfather. Who's now not my grandfather because I don't exist. I don't know, with my former grandfather. Time travel's weird. Number 5. The First Civil War. Well, you might think of Tony Stark from the First Civil War as main continuity Iron Man. He's also kind of an alternate at this point. While at the time we would consider Iron Man to be part of that main continuity, in modern day the version of Tony we have now had the events and basically the guilt of Civil War I basically wiped from his mind. Okay, let me explain. In part 1 we touched on the events of Axis and Superior Iron Man, which happened after the First Civil War. But before this mind wipe happened, it all went down because Norman Osborn had been given the reins for America's superhero team and operation, creating Hammer. To protect all the secrets that he knew, especially in regards to superheroes' names and their identities, because Civil War I happened, Tony decided to wipe his mind. This had the added bonus of basically erasing the events of Civil War I and his misdeeds from his psyche, meaning that he was no longer really the Tony that we knew from that time. The one who had decided to, round up and imprison heroes who refused to register and ally themselves with him and the government. The one who inadvertently ruined Peter's life by encouraging him to join him and ultimately causing him to publicly unmask, which just ruined a lot of stuff in Spider-Man. Tony also ended up in a coma for a bit as a result of this mind wipe. But you know how comas work in comics, they're pretty much always temporary. And Tony was soon once more up and at 'em after having an earlier backup copy of himself rebooted into his mind, because you can just make backup copies of your mind when you're a genius like Tony Stark. So don't worry, he had a plan for that in case that ever happened to him. Fortunately, it did happen, and so they could use the plan. Thanks, Pepper. Number 4. Arno Stark. Arno Stark is Tony Stark's evil brother. His evil brother from 616. Well, he's not always super evil, but he definitely has some questionable approaches when it comes to being Iron Man. He's like Tony, but with more questionable morals, I guess. Arno was actually the natural-born son of Howard and Maria Stark. Tony would learn about Arno and also find out that he was actually the adopted son of the couple. Arno first uses the mantle of Iron Man in 2019 in the 2018 series Tony Stark Iron Man in issue number 19. Arno as Iron Man ended up in a fight with Tony during the seeming robot revolution, believing that the only way to solve the issue of humans versus AI was to enslave the human population. It makes sense if you're following Arno through that story. Tony was forced to then stop his brother by trapping him in his virtual armor and placing him in a dreamlike virtual reality where he was seen as a hero. I'm sure that won't end up ending badly for Tony in years to come. Right? It's not like Donald Blake was living in a virtual reality where he was happy and then realized it was fake and then escaped and then tried to kill all the Thors or anything like that. That totally didn't happen, guys. Number 3. Infamous Iron Man. Maybe one of the most evil, but also somehow one of the best at the same time, was Infamous Iron Man. This was when Dr. Doom stepped up to the plate to replace Iron Man after his defeat in Civil War II, which of course left him in a comatose state. So many comas. 2 figures rose up to replace Tony at that time, one being Ironheart, aka young genius Riri Williams, and another being Dr. Doom, who became Infamous Iron Man. While Ironheart was more the heroic counterpart of the two, Doom also learned more and more about what becoming a hero entailed through his journey. And while he was ruthless as Iron Man, in the end he did kind of become a hero. However, this is still Dr. Doom we're talking about here, and eventually he left the mantle to return to Latveria and his life of villainous schemes and plots, back to the old status quo. And because this is still Dr. Doom underneath the armor, I think we can count him as an evil alternate. No. Number 2. Cancer vs. Iron Man. This version of Iron Man was also corrupted, though not by the controversial story arc of the 90s event The Crossing, but instead by the Many-Angled Ones. He hails from the reality of Earth 10011. Here Iron Man became corrupted by the Cancerverse after Marvel made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones, which would cure him of his cancer. Death no longer existed in this reality, which did not bring about a paradise, but instead a hellish dimension. Iron Man became loyal to Marvel, joining his Revengers team. It was Iron Man who also defeated Hulk in this reality, capturing Quasar, aka Wendell Vaughn, who had come to this reality from Earth 616, and had been attacked by the Hulk, which is why Iron Man had to be like, no Hulk, no, taking Quasar with me. Iron Man would join his fellow Revengers in their attempt to invade Earth 616, but in the end they would be defeated. Whew. Number 1. Darkhold Iron Man. One of the darkest versions of Iron Man to ever exist at this point in comics, who starts out as an optimistic inventor and quickly becomes overtaken by his own invention, twisted, driven insane till the point when he starts to harm others with the love of his own iron suit, comes from the Darkhold Iron Man comic. Here Iron Man builds his fated suit, but realizes too late that the suit is overzealous with its protection. It doesn't just seek to protect Tony while he's inside the suit, but seeks to protect him always by kinda keeping him inside the suit. The suit heals him from the inside, but removes his skin whenever he takes parts of the suit off. Tony believes the issue is that the suit thinks iron skin is better than human skin, and so it decides to remove it. However, after compulsively putting the whole defective suit on, including the helmet, it begins to dissolve Tony's skin and then his skull as well. He basically becomes fully bonded with and reliant on the suit. Driven insane, he believes everyone should have an iron suit and attempts to have the whole world basically join him, including Happy, Jarvis, and his love interest and assistant in this story, Pepper Potts. It's really dark.
Kicking off the list at number 10, making weapons. Now, of course, we see Tony Stark as the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, but how exactly did Tony end up with all that cash money? Well, in the MCU, it is shown that Tony is running his father's company, of course being Stark Industries. Founded in 1940 by, of course, Howard Stark, the company is the best at what it does, that being selling innovative weapons to the United States Armed Forces. Ooh, now after being kidnapped by the Ten Rings and seeing the damage that his weapons cause in an up-close and very personal way, he of course seized all manufacturing of the weapons division. But the damage is done. It is later revealed in Avengers Age of Ultron that one of his Stark Industries manufactured missiles killed Wanda and Pietro Maximoff's parents. Not cool, Stark, not cool. Number 9, Hulk's field trip. In the MCU, the Hulk leaves the Avengers and the planet for that matter. See, after tossing Ultron out of the Quinjet, the Hulk lets himself fly away on autopilot, perhaps feeling that he's done too much damage and that his presence is causing more chaos than comfort. Well, in the comics, that basically happens, but it's done with haste. And it's done by none other than our very own Iron Man. So the Incredible Hulk issue 92, titled Planet Hulk, starts off with Reed Richards and Tony Stark talking to a monitor, and that monitor is sending footage to the Hulk in the ship. They explain to the Hulk their trick, which was to send the Hulk away while he was already in space for a previous mission with Fury. They say they've picked his destination very carefully, which is this lush planet full of vegetation and game, no intelligent life forms. Sounds pretty easy breezy for a creature like that, only of course he ends up on Sakaar, which is not that planet. It's very different. He's actually forced to become a gladiator and fight for his life. Now, the Hulk is out of the picture, right? Mission accomplished, we did it. Pew, gone, get that guy out of here. Wrong. Sakaar ends up being destroyed and the Hulk, well, he's got some names to scratch off his get even list. So he heads back to Earth to find the Illuminati and seek revenge, including on Tony Stark. Number 8, he faked his own death. Iron Man issue 284 has quite an interesting cover. It shows Tony Stark wearing a suit, but like a boring kind of suit, in a casket. Ooh. And the text at the bottom of the page reads, "The death of Anthony Stark." It shows all these superheroes mourning the loss of their friend and fellow Avenger. Even Dr. Doom is like, ah yes, let us drink to the memory of a worthy opponent. Like, you know you're sick if Dr. Doom is like, yeah, cheers, I'll drink to you, that's cool. And to make things even crazier, he writes a note to Rhodey that says, "This keycard will give you full access to the entire complex. Take this CD-ROM disc to my office and play it on the AV system." Wow, nothing says futurist rich billionaire like, take this CD. It'll help you. Okay, you have to like wipe it off first. Put it in. So he puts it in and clicks play, and it is pretty awesome. It shows Stark explaining that somebody has to carry on for him. The world needs an Iron Man. And bam, you see a suit made just for Rhodey. What a moment. Tony continues to say that Iron Man was the greatest thing that he's ever invented, and he doesn't want it to die with him. Fair. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming for him though. I mean, all that responsibility of being the new Iron Man, plus mourning your best friend, plus figuring out how to run a company, that's a lot of. So finally, he suits up and it's epic. Iron Man lives again, but it turns out Tony wasn't actually dead at all, rather just under cryogenic stasis until a scientist sorted out his spinal software problems. Ha! Gotti! And number 7, he created Ultron. Ultron can't see the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that? That line is said by Wanda Maximoff in Avengers Age of Ultron. So Tony has created some amazing stuff. All of his suits, his innovative tech. Barf? Barf? That's the greatest thing. This dude knows what he's doing. But what if he created a supervillain? Ooh. So we find Tony and Bruce working on Ultron, right? Or just the idea at this point, rather. See, Tony had this idea since Avengers 1 that if he could create a suit of armor around the world, it would be a safer place, or rather create a robot that kicks ass essentially. Something that just takes care of threats while the Avengers, I don't know, read a book, relax for once in their lives. Of course, one of the main elements helping them achieve this goal is the return of Loki's scepter. They think by studying the central power unit of the scepter, which ended up being the Mind Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones, they can finally solve this puzzle and be safe. Tony ends up accidentally infusing the consciousness from the Mind Stone into this evil, jealous killer bot that mirrors many aspects of Tony Stark. So Ultron immediately starts to learn about what he is and who the Avengers are, and with his brain being the super AI, he decides they've all just gotta go. And by the end of the movie, we have a horribly damaged Sokovia with roughly 177 deaths. One of those deaths being Charles Spencer, a young American engineer killed in the final fight. Charles's mother ends up confronting Stark in Captain America's Civil War, which ultimately leads to, drumroll, number 6, signing the Accords. Captain America Civil War was one of the most highly anticipated MCU movies, and it's pretty easy to figure out why. The two teams going against each other, I mean, even the poster, I was sold. The movie touches base on incidents like Charles Spencer. How many people have died because of the Avengers? I mean, sure, the whole fun is seeing somebody like Stark create this powerful villain and then use his own wit to defeat him with the help of the Avengers. But like, an asteroid basically hit Earth. I'm surprised more people didn't die in Sokovia, to be honest. So the government sees this and makes every superhero sign these accords, and Tony Stark is all on board. He wants this to happen. He's pushing it. That way the government can control what they do or where they go. So it's not their name that's on the line. And if you don't sign, you retire. That's the deal. Now, of course, some team members don't agree, like, you know, Captain America, who's all about freedom. Tony basically forced team members to sign up and go against his very own coworker, Steve Rogers. It's wild because we see both these character arcs changed in this movie for the both of them. We see Cap at the start, who wants to be this like team player and do everything by the books, you know, in Captain America, the first Avenger. And now, by his third movie, he's an outlaw. Because Tony Stark didn't listen to him about Bucky. Now Stark, when we first met him, he was cocky, he was rich, he wanted to punch his way through all the problems, even spying on S.H.I.E.L.D. the second he entered the helicarrier. But now, Tony wants everybody to sign and work for the government, all because he feels bad about creating Ultron and blowing it out of the sky. If he had never signed and listened to Cap, the crazy plan of Zemos wouldn't have actually worked. The band would still be together, and when Thanos came to Earth, they all would have smoked him before he even got hands of all the Infinity Stones. Ha! Rant over. Number 5, hashtag engaged. Spider-Man Homecoming was released in 2017 and directed by John Watts. And it's amazing. I mean, this version of Spider-Man, this film version, this is Spider-Man. The older Tom Holland gets, the more and more this dude is gonna become Spider-Man. Like, he's gonna basically do what Robert Downey did with Iron Man. Like, it just works. This is it. We've found the casting for this character. Done. Good luck to anybody else who wants to replace these guys. So one thing I hated about Spider-Man Homecoming was the very end of the movie. So Tony has this plan to introduce the world to Spider-Man, the newest Avenger, even showing him this fancy new Iron Spider suit as part of the pitch. Peter Parker, being all coy and smart, thinks that it's just a test and politely declines the offer. He says he would rather be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man just to chill out, you know? So Tony reacts in a great way. He's all for it. He's like, yep, protect the little guys, I gotcha. And then after Peter walks away, we see Pepper Potts emerge from behind him, and in the background you can see all of these reporters and spectators. He really was planning on introducing a new Avenger. Also, after the events of Civil War, really? I always thought that was a weird time to be like, hey, remember on the news when this was a big deal? Well, here to introduce a high schooler with the ability to throw a bus, here's Spider-Man. He even comes with 4 metal arms and instant kill mode. Check it out. Not a great plan, no. So instead of introducing the new Avenger, he has to do something. I mean, those poor reporters, how are they ever gonna get over it? So he grabs an engagement ring and last second he proposes to Pepper Potts. Ah, damn. That's not a bad trick to have up your sleeve. Like, ah, damn, I forgot my school project. Maybe I'll just propose to somebody in class instead. That'll distract them. Number 4, address shoutout. If there's somebody that wants to kill you, odds are you're just gonna stay away from that person, right? Like, you don't just give your address out to the public, let alone, I don't know, a terrorist. So after Happy gets put in the hospital due to one of the Mandarin's attacks on the Chinese theater, Tony Stark decides he's got a few choice words for the man responsible, the Mandarin. Iron Man 3 of course didn't go so well with fans given that the villain was just a fake out, and a fake out that people were actually really looking forward to seeing. I mean, the Mandarin's one of the coolest villains ever, and instead we got not the Mandarin. We got like a guy who turns red. But in his message to the Mandarin after visiting Happy in the hospital, Tony says how he's not afraid of the Mandarin, and he in fact should just die. Pal. Do you ever argue with somebody and then you take it like a step too far and you're like, I shouldn't have said that? So Tony gives his address to everybody filming. There's a news crew, there are people on their phones. Like, dude, I get you're upset, but come on, use your smart billionaire head. So of course he gets attacked by the Mandarin because he's the Mandarin, and that's what villains do. They attack your Malibu mansions. What did you expect? And out of all of the suits Tony has access to, I'm talking his suit in the final battle for Avengers, he has the briefcase suit, the suitcase suit where he's like, you know, out of all these things, no, this guy gears up with a prototype suit. And of course he gets wrecked. That attack sets up the entire film. Could have easily been avoided if you just didn't give your address out on the news. Silly man. And number 3, Superior Iron Man. So we go now to issue 1 of Superior Iron Man. The issue itself starts off mirroring the tech in Iron Man 3 in a way. Tony can control his suit and fight inside of it, but he's not actually in the suit. He's actually laying in a pool, sipping on margaritas. So his new Extremis armor was fascinating. So much so that Tony released it as like the smartphone app. Now this app allowed people to change their bodies using this virus, becoming however they wanted. And it was great, but then Tony does the ultimate power move and says that the app was actually just a free trial, and in order to continue using it, you have to pay 100 smackaroos a day. Honestly, that's not a bad deal. I would pay that to become Iron Man, definitely. I'd be broke. You know what I would do? I would actually pay for the app, and then use the suit to rob banks, and then use that money to pay for the app. I'm a villain. I guess I just realized I'm definitely a villain. Just said it out loud, there we go. Number 2, Bad Armor. In the Age of X limited series released back in 2011, we find Tony Stark in a rather odd predicament. See, at this point in the series, issue 2 I believe this happens, Tony is infected with this virus that is bonding him to his suit. You ever get like a piece of your sweater stuck to an arm hair and you're like, oh god, what's going on? And then you pull it and you're like, whew, that was close. It's kind of like that, except, you know, way worse. He's even going by the name Steel Corpse, which, I mean, as far as names go, it's pretty good. It's pretty fitting. Now, at this point, he was a mutant killer. It's a long story, but basically when Iron Man went to stop killing these mutants, in like the turning point of the comic, his suit, which was now literally part of him, started to control him against his will. And it's super scary how it looks on the page. Like, he looks so different and sick and gruesome. His body's not doing well at all handling the merge. So his armor starts to take aim at a group of mutants against his will, and he freaks out, begging Captain America to save them in a rather dark way, if you know what I'm saying. So Cap then takes out Iron Man with a shot to the head. Nice move. A little late, I would have done it sooner in this series, but definitely a good call. And finally for number 1, Demon in a Bottle. So the classic storyline that was actually the center of attention for Iron Man 2 back in 2010. So in this movie we find Tony Stark, and at this point the arc reactor in his chest was powered with a palladium core. So time plus usage of the Iron Man suit equals poison. Not great. So we see Tony's life being ran down to the ground. We see his mental health start to decline, and at Tony's party he's hammered, he's peeing in his suit, and then to see a drunk superhero like Tony Stark acting like that, it wasn't random. This idea didn't come out of nowhere. The idea was loosely based on the Demon in a Bottle storyline from the comics. See, this character arc begins with Iron Man issue 120. We see Tony just slamming drinks. The opening shot, we see like 3 mini bottles of gin, and then Tony orders more. And the flight attendant's like, hey, how about a magazine, because it's the middle of the day? And Tony responds with, nope, I'll do another martini. She even tries to cut him off. She tries to cut off Tony Stark. You know how fat that tip would have been? She says, sir, you've had like 3 already, are you sure? And he's like, yes ma'am, I am. Stating that he's drinking for 2, the other of course being his Iron Man persona. That's a lovely sign right there. What happens when you have a superhero who loves slamming martinis? Well, you get Tony flying through the air drunk, spreading toxic fumes all over a crowd. The drunk tank himself even cheated on his girlfriend Bethany. Not cool. The alcohol addiction was of course put to the side for the MCU storyline, thank God. Like, imagine if Tony tried to snap his fingers but he was too drunk. He's like, and I'm so hungry. Can we go home please? Like, I gotta eat junior chickens right now.